Welcome to another live gaming video, and I'm outside again, so I do apologise if there's a lot of noise. I will also apologise that I am a little under the weather, so if I have a massive coughing fit, sorry. But today's live stream, I want to talk about, actually that's better, you can see me now. I want to talk about Yuzu and the whole Nintendo emulation scene at the minute, because big in the news is that the Switch emulator Yuzu has been got at by Nintendo, sued, whether you agree or not, and it's a 2.4 million payout. Ooh, lost connection. Emulation is one of those grey areas where technically, most of the time anyway, emulation is not illegal. It's what you do with it as an end user, although some systems or some emulators are a little bit more trickier to get working and may need some naughty decryption codes, etc. But big in the news is that Yuzu the Switch emulator has been sued. It's been taken down. They also contributed to the Citra emulator, which is the one for the 3DS, so they've pulled out of that as well. I don't know if that means no more Citra altogether, or whether it is just them. And it's sad news. It is and it isn't. So my stance on emulation is that it's fantastic. I've been a long fan of emulators for about 20 or 30 years. When I started playing Mega Drive games on my PC, and it's evolved from there. I mod a lot of my consoles so that I can then play older games on those systems. So my Vita is modded, my DSi is modded. I've done it to a PS2 and a Nintendo Wii. One of my videos on here somewhere is playing Super Mario Bros. Super Mario World on a PlayStation 2. So I don't have an issue with emulation. I don't like emulating new hardware. There's a line that I draw. Why would we need Switch emulation when Switch is the current offering for Nintendo? I can see why companies like Nintendo would suddenly get a bit shirty about it, because you're taking away their revenue. Technically, it's possible to take away their revenue because you download a ROM which you shouldn't download, and you're using it on a system that you shouldn't use it on. I like the whole technical aspect of it, that it's someone has put a lot of effort and a lot of passion into making it possible, but I do think that emulation should be for systems that are no longer current or no longer making money. So I don't see any problems in emulating the Atari 2600 or the Super Nintendo or the Game Boy, even things like the Wii or the PS2. Those systems have long finished. They've had their shelf life. The legality around emulating is that technically you can emulate and you can download ROMs as long as you own that game, and personally I do. I use emulation as a way of capturing good quality gameplay footage for a start. So a lot of the videos that I've done recently I've captured using something like OBS, and I can capture Atari games, Game Boy games, DS games. These are all games that I own physically, but then I will go and download the emulator and the ROM to go with that, and play it on my laptop and capture the footage for use in generally like YouTube videos, etc. And the same with other systems: SNES, NES, Mega Drive, Master System, Game Gear, Game Boy, DS. These are all fantastic consoles that have had their day. I mean, Sega or Nintendo or whoever it is are not going to be making any more money out of it. So what is the harm in letting people use those games that they own, obviously, on a different system. I'm sure there's some legality there where you're sort of circumventing this, that, and the other. And I think that might be where it's fell apart for Yuzu, because they're bordering on the line of they've done something that they shouldn't have done or that annoyed Nintendo, so there's that. But it is a bit of a sad day for the emulation scene, because these systems, they take a long time to emulate and to get perfect. I mean, even Citra now, the 3DS emulator, it's still nowhere near where it needs to be, and I haven't really delved any further than like the Xbox or the PS2 in terms of home console emulation, but I know it's possible to do even further. PS3, Wii, PSP, Vita, those newer systems that require a bit more nous and a bit more oomph. I mean, things like SNES 9X, that emulator has been around for decades, and it's perfected. The games play absolutely spot on. They have low system requirements, and the developers have been at it for a long time, so you get that. Things like the DS emulator, that's still a little bit rough in places, but it will come with time, and I think the PS3 emulator, which I've had no experience with, it's there, but it just needs tweaking. So it is a bit of a sad day, but I can see why Nintendo shut down an emulator that is technically taken away the possibility of profits for Nintendo, because it's a current system. I think they also got in trouble for leaking game footage before it came out, so it really is hitting Nintendo in the pocket. But it's sent a bit of ructions through the emulation world. There are some other emulators that I think are one of them I think is MGBA, which is a fantastic Game Boy Advance emulator, and also it can do Game Boy Color. The developer of that has said that he needs to stop to focus more on his family, etc. But I think deep down it's the worry of getting done over by Nintendo, and that is a sad thing. Emulation also brings around game preservation. I know there are places like Nintendo like to release a few games on either physically on new systems or via the store, but it's a select few games. There are hundreds, thousands of games that will never see the light of day, and emulation keeps them alive, makes that possible, gets new people interested in them. I think for Nintendo, it's about money, which obviously as a company they need, but they need to go after the big fry. I think going after Yuzu was probably a good thing, especially from sort of a finance point of view, but it's going to hinder Switch emulation for a long time, and it's the old ones. I mean, why pull out of Citra? That's a dead platform. 3DS is no longer anything profitable for Nintendo except re-releasing games on Virtual Console or whatever it's called these days. So yeah, that is the news really, that Yuzu the Switch emulator has been got at by Nintendo. It's taken down part of Citra. There are other few emulators developers that are, I think, running scared. It's gonna harm the progress of other emulators, but that is what it is. My take on it is, leave the older ones alone. You're not making any money out of it. It's that community that are keeping older games going. I mean, it's a difficult one, because technically most people will use emulation for illegal purposes, for just downloading loads of games that they don't own, and if it's done sensibly, then why can't they do it? Why can't companies, that's a good point, why can't companies take on these developers and make it official and officially release ROMs, even if it's a small amount? So I don't know, if Atari was to pick up the Stellar emulator, which is the one I use for capturing footage from the Atari 2600 games that I own, why can't Atari pick that up, release it as software, then and officially release these games, maybe with like an encryption so they can't be pirated? I don't know, I just don't see any interest in this kind of preservation until they can see some money in it, and then you get the way they re-release consoles, or they re-release like compilations on other systems. So yeah, I'm rambling a little bit here, but it is a bit of a sad news about Yuzu. It's going to have an impact on the rest of the emulation scene, but how far that impact goes, we will see. I will continue to legally emulate and download ROMs for the systems that I have. It's just a more convenient way of playing them sometimes, and I do it so I can capture screen footage of consoles that there's no way of capturing screen footage, or I'm not going to go out and buy a box to record footage when I can just run it off my laptop, capture Game Boy and what else, anything really, Dreamcast and Atari 2600 and any of the systems that I own. And it's for purposes like this, where I can capture that footage and play it while I'm talking, and that's why. So there you go, that's a little ramble from me about emulation. You've probably seen in previous videos I am a big fan of emulation, and there you go. Well, jump in, drop some comments, let me know what you think. Link, like, subscribe, enjoy.